Our Artists and Authors program this evening, and we are honored to have author Linda Leuzzi talk about the new book, My Year with the Italian Girl, and we have our favorite Italian girl, who is going to interview her. And we will have time for questions afterwards, and Linda has books, and we have wonderful refreshments and wine in the front. So please join me in welcoming Linda and Isabella.
Oh, thank you. So it's interesting to be in a reverse role, me interviewing Linda, because we met with Linda interviewing me. So I'm very intimidated because she might say, she's a really bad journalist. One of the things that I loved about Linda's interviews, and I was surprised, is that you were always very accurate. Like, I do a lot of press because I'm an actress, and when I don't read, generally, I don't read the articles that are written about me because I always get angry. There's always something that is imprecise, or there is a snotty comment, like everybody feels they have to comment on something, and you know what it means, that it's just one word, but it's stated. It never happened with Linda, and I thought, this is an exemplary journalism, because I thought journalism was about who, where, what, how, you know, and factual, and you were always so factual. And then you told me, I'm writing a novel. And I thought, and this is my first question, when will this desire to write a novel came about? Were you always a frustrated journalist that had to stay within the limit? Or were you, or this happened in, you know, all of a sudden? We were your muse, because your book takes place here, a lot of it here. So maybe we were your muse.
Okay, you ready for the story? I've been wanting to write fiction since I probably was 8 or 9. The first book I ever read that really struck me was Little Women. And I know that it's an older book, etc., but Jo March was such a feisty woman, and I really admired her because I'm such a dork. And I just wanted to be like her, so I read it like 13 times and started going to the library. So that was the start. But the advent of this book really started in 2005 because I had started doing some stories here. I think maybe I'm jumping a little ahead of myself, so why don't you continue?
No, it was interesting. I remember also how Jo in Little Women impressed me and became almost a role model. I said,
yes.
I like her the best.
Yes, yes.
Because she was very feisty. And the moment you said Jo, I thought of Vivian in your book. So the book is written as the voices of 3 women. The Vivian, Keisha, an African-American girl that lives here, and Francesca, who is the Italian girl that comes here as an exchange student. In the book, every chapter changes and there's the voice of a different woman. And Vivian I identified with because she's very feisty. She's very independent. And I thought, this must be Linda. I also thought that Vivian was the closest to your character. But how did the character came about? And this idea to write a book with 3 women voices, although 2 are young and 1 is an older lady.
All right. Well, Francesca basically was initiated by an exchange student that we had from Catania. We mentored her, and she lived in the area for a year. We did go to visit her in Catania, and also to Taormina. We took a side trip to Taormina. But the first chapter actually captures when she talks about the Bellini Opera House. She took us there, and it was so beautiful. So I wanted to get that in there. So that started it. But I was actually in a shop in Sayville, and they were talking, the woman was there, the owner was talking about her daughter who went to Bellport High School, and she was taking step classes there. Not the Irish ones, the other ones that, you know, they do all sorts of things. And it just struck me, I'm like, well, what if the Italian girl, she kind of joins with this black girl and then lives with an American woman who's a newspaper editor, and what would happen? I was kind of between, I've been working for the Tuttle family since 1997. And I was kind of between editor jobs at the time. So I wrote the book, that started it. And then over the years, I just kept going with it.
So this is a project that was years, it took you years to make.
Yeah, years in the making. It was serialized in the advance between 2008 and 2009. And then I put it aside because when you're editor of a small town paper, you're kind of, going like 90 miles an hour.
Yes.
So someone had told me, your social life is your job, and I agreed. And that was fine with me because I really love the work a whole lot. But when I stepped aside as editor in late 2016, I said, okay, girl, now's the time. So let's get going with this.
And
book.
is the serialized version similar, exactly
No,
the same or
it's
changed?
shorter. Yeah, it's shorter. There's more stories in here because I had more experiences in Bellport. So.
You can't keep going. I mean, the book can be going.
Well,
The girls are still there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was impressed was that there's a lot of references in history. And I'm going to read a little bit of your book, because besides telling the story of our community, and I sometimes recognize some people, or a combination of some people. I have to ask you that question, or the dynamics more than there wasn't any indiscretion, but the dynamics among people. But there was also occasionally I thought, wow, she goes into a big history, and you tell the history from Queen Elizabeth to the Roman time, but just from a point of view of a person who has this thought. So I just got two chapters, and I'm going to read you some of it. This is chapter 25. It's Keisha, the African-American girls that write. It's Christmas dinner. Vivian is there, Francesca is there, the family is there, and she is writing about it. And then in the middle of the chapter, when she describes the dinner, she says, I've studied history because I want to know what I'm dealing with now. Are times better? Are they worse? Everyone makes such a big deal about the founding fathers. Tell me, what's so great about allowing slavery to continue? What's so great about shoving aside native people? That's not honoring all men who are created equal. That's not honoring a nation for the people and by the people. Well, which ones? And then, as this develops, just a paragraph later, Keisha continues, between 1735 and 1775, 1,108 slave ships came into Charleston Harbor. And she talks about her ancestor. They are going back into 1700. So all of a sudden, from a Christmas dinner of a family in Bellport-Brookhaven, whoa, you have an incredible sense of history. And then I'll give you the other example is with Francesca, who in chapter 20, she said, it's a funny question I'm asked all the time. How does your country different from the United States? When you're used to seeing old buildings in your everyday life, certainly something that stays in your consciousness. Our city, that is Catania, which is a city in Sicily, south of Italy. Our city was totally engulfed by the Etna, the volcano, in 1693, and was completely rebuilt after that. But there have been other eruptions. Some buildings, old Roman buildings, are still existing, and one is the Roman Theater, which dates 21 before Christ. And you pass on your way to the school or to a shop, and I might glance as you're thinking of how you would like to smack your younger brother or sister because they're not acting nicely to you, and how satisfying it would be to place them permanently in the underground catacomb. And then in another moment, the stone, the symmetry, the beautiful detail constructed by artisans so pleasing to look at and I'm remembered of the big picture. And then Sicily was founded in the 18th century before Christ, and you give a history of Sicily. There was something, so I give this example because the book takes you in this great moment of history, but the page after that, there is something that I found that is very Italian, and I thought that is the difference with America. I always think that America looks forward because it's a country of entrepreneur, of the future. And in Italy, you have such a presence, the history so present, that you often look backwards instead of forwards. And then you say too, Francesca describes being always in the shadow of the volcano too, an almost unconscious urgency to make your life count in many ways and to accept certain circumstances of fate. And that I always thought it was the difference between American and Italian. Italian, they are very, you don't have a feeling, you know, the question, how do you make a difference? I always say, that's a very American feeling that you can make a difference. As an Italian, you don't make a difference. You are a tiny speck. You are a tiny speck in the history.
You made a difference.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean, the feeling that you have because the history is so present and the other life. And so it was interesting to see how you captured with the volcano. And I wanted to ask you, what is the role in history for you? Are you reading, when you read, what books do you read? History books, novels?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. And I have to tell you this is really funny, because people tell me when they see me on the street, Linda, I saw you walking, but like you walked right past me. Because I'm always thinking, when we started going to Europe in the, oh God, I'm trying to remember, doesn't matter. We started going in our 30s. So you're looking around at everything. And they preserve stuff that's really important. And I'm like, this is really neat. I honestly, sometimes when I read the book over, I'm like, where did I pull this out of? You know, but it's just, I guess it's thinking through things. And I wanted the book to be, have some heft. So that the black girl is thinking about her, you know, basically her heritage and how she came here. Because she's a mature girl. Both girls are mature. I know when I had Eleonora, the exchange student, she would talk about things, and they do think about, some kids do think about this stuff. But I just think that there's an aura out there when you go to these places, historical places, and you just pick it up. I just pick it up. That's how I feel about it. There's like a respect there, you know. It's just incredible.
But the book reflects this presence, this ghostly presence, or you know, you see something and boom, your mind goes wandering into many other directions. Now, talking about this magical moment where you are taken into every direction, in your book also there is something that you called sometime mystical, and I think I sent you an email and I called it magical. There are moments that they are very magical, and from a book that it is, or a journalist that is very matter of fact, occasionally there are things that are very spiritual. And I also realized through your book, and I don't know if I tried to read your personality to your book, what a committed environmentalist you are. You know, and I, because you are a journalist that never, I could never tell, you know, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, or what religion are you, you know, you can never, but I didn't know that mystical sense that you write Francesca has about her history and Keisha has about her history, you seem to have about the environment. And a lot of the book, and I know that is very fictional, takes place, there is a property that then I think happens to be Mama Farm in, and I was very, how was it? Oh, wait a second. It happens to be Mama Farm and CEED, so you know the old Mary's Brother property that now is split between the CEED, the Center for Environmental Education, and my farm, Mama Farm, that was sold to a developer and was going to be developed. And you have a fictional character, Art Roland, that has bought it from a family, the Wiley Estate, that is also an invented name, but I could tell that it's Wiley Estate is my land. So the Wiley Estate is going to be developed, and the Wiley family is a family that used to be very committed to the environment. Now they are dead, and the family decided to sell it. And Art Roland, the developer, meets Linda, or not Linda, meets Vivian for an interview, and she doesn't express anything. He just says, I have to clear cut, and she just says, okay, how many trees? 100. Doesn't say anything, you know, she's a perfect journalist. But then she takes a walk in the property that now is going to be developed, and she said, and at golden afternoon, I swear I saw it, a woman appear standing 10 feet away, dressed in a pretty flowering dress, who looked like a younger version of Alice Wiley. It was Alice, all right. Or let me correct that. It was a spirit, apparition, you name it. A fox was by her side, and a screech owl was on her shoulder, and this was daytime. I always loved Alice. She used to ruffle my hair and say, back again, and give me an extra cookie. Except now, she said, Vivian, help save my beautiful land and my trees. How can you proceed, mystical stuff? Who do you tell? She then writes Linda, but I would like you to tell us. So these are, and occasionally they have this mystical moment in the book.
Well, I have a thing about trees, I always have. But there was an incident that happened in Mastic. I'm not going to go in any further, but the guy took down 100 trees. And I had gone down to investigate this whole thing. I was like almost hanging from a bough with John Turner, like to see where the headwaters were for the Carmen's River. I don't want to go there. They took them down. Alice Wiley is a prototype for this woman, Hathaway Scully. I knew about her probably 20 years ago. I was working for the Suffolk County News at the time, and she owned the Wiley estate. It was like a Normandy style estate. She was very wealthy, and she was an environmentalist. She would lead kids on tours, and if there was an injured animal, she would literally bring them back to health, you know, try to anyway, sometimes in her house. And this I found out by doing a story about a luthier who wound up being her groundskeeper, and he told me the story about her. I was very taken with her. Hathaway just was a really good woman. So when I did this book and I came up with this whole topic, that's who I wanted her to be. Now, as far as mystical moments, I have never seen an apparition, but there were a couple of things that have happened to me that were really kind of interesting. The first time I went to the Forum, the Roman Forum, I'm like standing there and I feel like the centuries are like swirling around me. And I had to sit down. Like, what the heck is this? It just was a feeling. And I have it in here also about the coronation chair when she goes to Westminster Abbey and she sees this chair that's been used since the 12th century, and everybody and his uncle, all the kings and queens, have been coronated there. I looked at this chair for probably 5 minutes. I was rooted to the spot. I was like, and one of the docents had come over, literally, like what's in this book. He says, I can see you're really affected by this. He said, I can't get over this chair. I said, and it's this little dinky thing. I said, this little simple chair that he told me. He says, sometimes people, you know, over the years, some kids, like from the 17th century, they would like write graffiti on it. You know, so I got like a little, he was very, I think he was very appreciative of the fact that I just was like, oh my God. So this is what happens with me sometimes with, I don't know if you would call mystical. I'm gonna make you laugh, and then please don't tell anybody this, but okay, you can. So whenever there's gonna be a really severe storm, I go in the back and I kind of bless my trees that just, you know, just pray that they're gonna make it, and I go across the street to this big black walnut, do the same thing. I warned my neighbor next door about this. She says, Linda, don't worry about it. You can come next door and you can do the same. So far, so good. But it's just, you can't say what draws you to these things, but that's just the way I feel, you know, so you got 3 stories.
Well, the book has so many layers, and going back to the environmental, because that is the moment where I think the owl and the fox comes back several times. Then at the end, there is a kind of an explanation why they behave like that, and that has happened because I lived so much in the city, and now I live here, and there are some wild animals that are tamed, and so at a certain point, there is probably in some neighborhood of yours, there is a blue jay, you know, that he comes around. That comes around and just sits on the table and eats your food and goes completely at ease. You know, so there are things that are like that happen. And when I was in the city, I thought I could only be in the legend or in the books. And here they are this, and I think now it happens that you help a little animal when, you know, wounded, or and then they lose the fear of men.
I've read about this where people who have helped animals with injuries and then they go off, they'll come back every year. It's not unusual, you know, they're not gonna live with you for the rest of your life, but maybe they're gonna come back and say, I'm okay, and I just want you to know. You know, it's another intelligence.
Absolutely.
And you know how that is. I mean, you know, we've had talks about this. I mean, we're just so, you know, this about some of us anyway, about animals, but they're really smart, and there's an intelligence there that, you know, we'll never fully understand. So.
Oh, there is definitely an intelligence there, and Darwin believed there was an
intelligence
intelligence there,
right?
So we're not alone. We're not just 2 old ladies crazy about animals. No. Scientists are proving it.
Blesses the trees.
Now, you kept the name of Art Cooley's and Danny Fulston, but you changed the name of others, and some name might have been authentic, but I might have not known the people, and I just wonder what made you decide to keep some names and some names in the identity.
The other people are not fictional, definitely, but Art Cooley I had met and done a story, and then when he passed, I was asked to do his obit. And Dennis Pulliston, I actually was lucky enough to meet him when I first moved back to Sayville and did a story on him. He's quite extraordinary. So it was just a way to honor these 2 men. You know, environmentalism is in the books, so I wanted to do that. You know, Dennis was a cool guy. He really was. You know, it's just
they really left a very strong imprint on our culture.
Yeah, they did.
Very much.
You know, and you know, I think this area reflects it. You know, you guys are really lucky. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a more practical question about how do you write? For example, I write my plays and I write my monologue, and I wrote a book too, and and some days you're very discouraged and you say I can't do it. And I was given, it was Bob Gottlieb, who was the editor-in-chief of the New Yorker and also the editor of Knopf, who was a friend of mine, and he said to me, he gave me one of the best advice, so I'm just saying it to you just in case you need an advice. He said, if you want to write, you have to lock yourself up every day at the same hours and do it for 3 or 4 hours. And someday you just sit there and you have nothing to do and you go crazy, but just sit there. Do not walk out saying, oh, I'm giving up. Just stay there. And then all of a sudden you started to write, and then 3 hours or 3.5 hours off, go away. Don't say like, oh, today's a good day, and you write and write and write because you get tired and the writing is not good.
Yeah.
So you stay disciplined 3 hours, and that's how I write.
Yeah.
I get up very early in the morning at 5, and from 5 to 8, 9, I write, and then I stop. Do you have that helped me. Bob Gottlieb's suggestion was very helpful. How do you do it?
I've been pretty lucky, and I think the reason is because of the stories I write, because, you know, I get an assignment, well, I used to do 5 to 7 stories a week, so it was what it was, and you really had to pull it out of your head. But with fiction, this is interesting to me, because usually the first 3 chapters come out like, whoosh, and you're right, for me it's usually like 9 to 12, because I get up and have coffee, go running, whatever it is, and, you know, do it. The thing about, and like I have another, like a sequel to this book in mind, and I'm already writing things, you know, down in a notebook about ideas, you know, to bring it forward. I remember one time, I have 2 other fiction books that are not out there really. I remember with one of them, I got stuck. And I was out on Shelter Island at a friend's bed and breakfast. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do my laundry. I'm gonna bring a pad and pen. And while everything is getting washed and dried, I'm gonna come up with something. And sure enough, I just let it go. Because when you sit on top of it, you're just making it go like this. You know, it's like you're not letting the thoughts in. So I guess it was in the spin cycle or something. And I'm sitting there on the front, there's like front step, you know, this was right down the block from Bliss's department store. And sure enough, I kind of wrote it, you know, wrote out what the next chapter would be, you know, when I was stuck. So you just have to honor it. You can't get so uptight about it. When you get an idea, make sure you have a pad and pen that you write it. And yeah, you gotta be quiet when you're writing and not be interrupted, because this is the flow.
It's a flow, you have to enter into another world,
so
the channel.
it's just,
I took a note about that, and you also write, because I'm always looking for advice. Where is it? You write here. You write, so I'm sorry to give you samples of the book, but I thought it was a good way to.
It's okay.
It's okay. I took this paragraph because it was about writing, and I wanted to ask you your method of writing. Some writers write from chapter 1 to the end, and some others, and then you edit at the end, and some others, they have many different ideas, and then they put it together as a puzzle. So I wanted to know, what was your flow? What is generally your flow? Now you say you're taking notes for your next book.
Yeah, I am. Well, I'll start it and then keep going. I think I have to back a little track on this thing, because when I sent it out, okay guys, here's the big secret here. I sent it out to 150 agents. And they, you know, it was rejection. I mean, or if you're lucky, you get an answer, you know, that kind of thing. But a couple of them got back to me. One was kind, and the other was actually gave me reasons why he rejected it. And he basically told me I had too much backstory up front. So I thanked him. I said, thank you for doing that. I said, I hope someday you'll be my agent, but I appreciate that you wrote back on it. So it's kind of like the gal who wrote The Help, who said that she had 100 rejections. I mean, I'll never forget this, because it was like, I was in the middle of the book and I'm like, okay. And she was asked, were you discouraged? And she said, no. She said, I just went back and made it better. Now, I won't say I wasn't discouraged. I mean, sometimes I threw things. but I just said, okay, Lynn, if you want this, you've got to do this. Also, I read a lot. I read tons. I mean, and so kind of like looking at the books that I've read and how they developed, it sort of like clicked with how I had to do this. So it's a combination of things, you know. It
Do
really
you
is.
read your book? I mean, because I do the monologues, and it was very helpful. My third monologue that I did here, Darwin Smile, was commissioned, and it was very useful because it was commissioned by the theater, and then the theater gave me a workshop. And so I did have the writing, but it was fantastic to workshop it because I could really understand, does this block should come here or this one should come later?
Yeah.
It was great to do it and have a little bit of an audience and see their reaction and what was understood and what wasn't. Do you have a sounding board? Do you have somebody that reads the book? No.
Just me.
No, just you.
Just me. This is the way I feel about it. It's my book, and I've written it, and I guess I'm just kind of like a very protective mother with this thing. You know, nobody. I don't know how else to say it. That's just the way it is. I just feel like, you know, and then you might have people that are like, well, I don't know, you know, this kind of thing. So I just said, you know, just stay away from it. I learned a long time ago not to ask other people their opinions on certain things that are important. I think we've all gone through this. So, because I did it once and it was like, don't do that again. So that's what I do. You know, you're in a different situation where, you know, they said, why don't you workshop it? So that's okay, but I just can't, you know, so I just don't, you know.
So I'm reading what you wrote because I'm always. The writing muse I had was almost mystical. I meant researching, but it seemed to find the right words when I probed my brain and asked the right questions. If I attended a village or a town board meeting at night, I gave it a rest, and the next early morning at my desk, when the sun was rising, the story barreled out through my fingers onto my computer as if I had been writing itself in my head the night before.
Yeah, that has happened. I've been to many town board meetings and village board meetings and all this kind of stuff. And some are particularly contentious. And I would stagger in at like 9:30, 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever it was, you know, have something to eat. And then I just say, okay, I'm going to bed and I'm going to sleep. And I honored it. And the next day I'd get up early, I'd go like this, I'd sit before the computer and then it would come out. I'm just lucky that way. I don't know what to say. I think because I trust it, I eat well, I sleep a lot. It's just like all these things that I do so that I can give my best to my stories. I think that's the best way to put it, you know?
That the word, yes. I have sometimes a brain, well, you do say you sleep on it, you know, when they want to clarify the idea.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to tell you something. So, you know, I have this degree, a master degree on animal behavior, and they've studied if animals dream. And of course we cannot know what they thought they have, but we know that if you put a rat on a labyrinth and he walks like this, and then he goes to sleep, and then he has, you know, electrodes then he will we think that he's dreaming and dreaming again of all the labyrinth and what he's done, and the next day he'll find the way out very fast. It seems that maybe one of the reasons of dreaming is for us and for other mammals a way to do this cleaning process of editing and what's important and what's not. That's one of the hypotheses.
I had read something about that when you're sleeping, your brain literally cleans stuff out.
Exactly.
And it just, that's.
It feels like it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we all had that
You get up
experience.
the next day and then you're feeling good, okay, I can do this thing, so, yeah.
Now, Linda, you've been a chronicle of our community for decades. What changed the most, you think, in the years that you followed us?
The pandemic, that's for sure. Well, I don't know necessarily, what's changed? I think,
Yes,
yeah,
or
well, I think everybody's gotten more environmentally conscious.
Mhm.
You know, that has happened. But the thing that I really love about community journalism, and I really kind of haven't like gone to any of the big publications or whatever, is because what I get out of it is when there's a tough time or somebody needs help, everybody runs and they take care of it. I've seen it in Sayville, Bayport, Blue Point, I've seen it here, Patchogue, it is life affirming.
Mhm.
So that part's always stayed the same. But the environmentalism, I think, has really ratcheted up. I mean, I know Bellport now has an environmental committee, which is
Mhm.
great,
Right, yes,
you
yes.
know,
The
and,
board,
you know. But that seems to have gotten more, you know, definite, you know, Friends of Bellport Bay, you know,
Yes.
there you go. I mean, it's great.
The
It really is.
oysters, Mama Farm.
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
Mama Farm, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, that's all going, so, you know, you sort of had it, but it really intensified over the years, which is wonderful.
Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? No? Yes, yes.
Well, you had said, I was a little bit late, but you had said that you used to work for small town newspapers. And a few months now, I've been thinking of starting one for Bellport and Brookhaven Hamlet. Yes, please do it. Because, you know, with all the events and whatnot, but to start that, what did you have to incorporate? I'm just curious how you got started into
Well,
doing that.
I work for the Tuttle family. I mean, so it's already an established paper. The Long Island Advance is like 150 years old. To exist, you need advertising and you need subscriptions. You know, I've heard comments about newspapers and stuff like that, but you know what? We've got a website and we're relevant. But those are the things you need if you wanna do something like that. That's really, you know, that pays for the staff, the production, the printing, all that stuff. So you need a backer some way if you're gonna do that.
The Advance is a wonderful newspaper. It really is. I've been in this community for now almost 40 years, and it was really the newspaper really helped me root in here, because at first I lived in New York and I came here only on the weekends. And if you have that experience, yes, you see the tree, you walk, you see the beach, but you don't understand the community, or you relate only to other New Yorkers. And then I started to read the Advance, and I thought, oh, there's this and that, and that's how I discovered Catherine and her film. There's a fantastic cinema in Patchogue, the Plaza Mac, that presents a fantastic film, foreign film, an incredible program. And all of a sudden I became more involved. So the Advance is something, you know, you can find it anywhere, at Cirillo, anywhere. I buy it every week and read it, and it gives fantastic local news, and we're delighted to have somebody young who would contribute. And if you don't think it is complete, probably it isn't, because unfortunately here, because probably the economy is limited, because we are not as big as New York, is a lot of older people that work, whether, you know, that we retire and then work for the community. So the newspaper is carried on. I do the farm. Trish does the Historical Society and the stock. So I'm delighted that you want to join in. Please, you know, buy the newspaper and call any of us. We'll put you in touch with how you think you can contribute. Yes?
I have a question that has to do about the environment. I live in the hamlet, and I have 3 acres, and I noticed in June, I've only been here 7 years, and I really don't hear very many birds, and I have lots of woods behind me. And I noticed in June there were a lot of birds, and then all of a sudden in July, and up until now, where did the birds go?
I want to tell you why.
Why? Tell me.
Love. They sing in the spring because the song is to seduce. The song is, and they mate in the spring, and then they have the babies, and then probably
But
not
where do they
babies.
go?
They're there, but they can change the plumage, and they don't sing, and they change the song, and in the winter you don't hear them anymore at all.
Right.
And then again in the spring you start
Oh, it's
hearing
like a
them.
musical.
Yes. They sing. There is the serenading.
wondering,
Now do you hear at night the cricket?
Yes.
Cricket is serenading.
Yes.
But now in another 2 weeks they stop.
Right.
It's also the use of insecticides.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Pesticides that,
That could be the bad news.
I don't use any.
No, but the cricket they sing now and then they
Yes,
stop.
yeah,
I mean,
they
that pesticides, maybe, I don't know that a lot of pesticides are used. In our area where there is deer run too, very careful about
Yeah,
what
they
they
don't-
use.
yeah, drones,
And they are
yeah.
not organic, then hog is organic and mama farm is organic. So actually, as Mama Farm, one of the biggest things we're trying to do is to educate the people that have gardens.
Yeah.
Because they have gardens and they use bad fertilizers for their lawn or even bad lawn. So I think the damage is more in the individual than the farm. The farm, pretty much here they are all organic or having natural.
I don't use anything, and I
No.
thought maybe, with all the fertilizing and the sprays and the
Yes, it is,
mosquitoes,
and
I
there is a movement to plant indigenous plants, so it require not only less water, but also nutritious for the birds, for the
Right.
insect and all that. So, but I think that the singing and
I'll wait for
the
the spring.
hearing, wait for spring. I think you'll hear right now there's the cricket that are serenading,
that's very
and
loud,
then
yes.
and then within 2 weeks they stop, not because they're dead, but they have seasons of love. We have it all the time. But,
Linda?
Yes.
Did your characters develop as you wrote the story, or did you
Yeah.
have them pre?
Well, the three main characters were really cemented, but then the other ones that came out, like Allie, well, Allie's a prototype of a friend of mine, Evie. She's a great gal. And the thing about her, like leaving the kids with the husband because everybody was taking advantage of her and she went to Hawaii, she really did that. So she's kind of a real character. You're in the book under another name.
Really? Oh, yeah. Give me 20 copies.
Yeah, but it's not. No.
I'm sorry?
I talk about the Bellport-Brookhaven Historical Society and Death by, I think it was Death by Chocolate.
Yes.
That was such a fun, I almost brought because I still have the front page of it. That was so hilarious that night. It was such a great,
You had a good time
and
doing
you had to prompt somebody because they forgot their line. And it was just very funny. Everybody got into it. They moved the fill in and they were like, go like this to the, whatever, the one that saved the day, so you're kind of.
I can't wait to meet you. Thank you.
But pretty much everybody else, it was funny because Kathleen Wiley, who's the older woman, I put older people in my fiction books because it's almost like, hopefully, I get wise, someday and become older, like that. But I just kind of made her up, I just kind of wanted. So how come she wanted to sell it, after all this time, when she was in environmentalism, what prompted it? And then I came up with the plot.
The plot, I didn't reveal it because it was one of the nicest turns in the book.
Yeah, all right, so
Why
sure.
would the family, why would the daughter of an environmentalist family that appears to you like the spirit, why would the daughter do that? And I thought in the book, well now I should say it because if you open it then it's bad to leave you. The daughter is actually so hurt and so low that she wants to move to Boston, and somebody says, okay, sell the land, and she says, yeah, that's a solution, and she hasn't thought it through. And when she sees Vivian so shocked and taking the walk, and then there's other things that are happening, she realizes that it's our own responsibility to be an environmentalist. We all have to take responsibility for our actions. And then she remains, and she actually finds a lot of solace in remaining instead of running away from her pain. But I thought it was a very touching moment, because we do that, isn't it? We do, sometimes pain makes you do something.
You just get
And then,
overwhelmed.
and then you
know.
hurt, you make it worse.
And Uncle Mike, I had an Uncle Mike. He's a funny guy, and he was great, he really was. He didn't dress up in a bunny costume.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay,
yes.
Sam.
Linda, I'm sorry to ask this question while your husband is here, but who is the dashing Englishman?
Ian, well,
He's buried.
Yeah. Well, we watch a lot of British shows.
Oh, God,
I
yeah.
love British shows. We watch a lot of British series. So he's pulled from one of those British series. Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
I was kind of hoping he was based on someone I could find.
We're looking for.
I thought that was me.
Sam.
That wasn't me?
One thing you gotta, which Linda doesn't really, I guess, tell too many people about. First of all, she reads more books than any 10 people I know put together. She probably goes through 4 or 5 books a week.
No. Not
I always see you come back from the library
no,
like this.
sometimes I'm reading, yeah.
And then one thing that we always do on vacation, and I can't remember a vacation where Linda hasn't done it, she journals the entire
Yeah.
vacation.
Yeah.
And we've had people come up with, what are you doing? You writing about this trip? And Linda really hasn't, it's mostly informational stuff, but it's a way of her practicing and gathering data and writing and organizing
Well,
it.
it's also remembering, it's kind
Yeah.
of, I tell people this too, because I also have a journal. You know, sometimes you go through the day and you go, so boring. And then you think it through, and it really wasn't. You know, a lot of things happen along the way, serendipity stuff, whatever, you know, and then you go, oh, that was pretty good, that was a pretty good day. But journaling when I'm on vacation is really important, and especially for this book. I mean, you know, the Catania thing,
Absolutely.
the Bellini Opera House, Taormina was gorgeous, and because there's an arena there, and she talks about her uncle, who's sings chant music. So, you know, I was able to kind of pop him there. It's valuable, it really is, you know, and you know, you got something to look back on besides pictures. It's really cool.
Yeah. And the exchange students that we mentored, and even the ones we didn't mentor, the ones that we brought in and or the ones that we sent out, some of the stories
Yeah, a couple of them are in the
are
book.
just incredible. And believe it or not, they were all girls. It was 28 girls.
Well, we didn't do 28.
We didn't do it. We had 7 or 8 that lived with us, but the others. that we-
Exchange students? You had 7 or 8 that lived with
Yeah.
us?
Well, they.
So you simplified it in the book, there is only one at a time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there were several, but
There were
and
several.
and I put in the book some of the questions that, well, first of all, we always get, do they speak English? I'm like, why do you think they're coming here? That's number
They
one.
speak English better
They
than we
speak
do.
English, and then I think what happens with some of the kids at school, some aren't that nice. And I would talk to the kids and I'd say, you know, I think what happens is they get a little overwhelmed. They don't know what to ask you. They don't know if they're gonna sound silly or whatever. It depends on the principal of the school. If he's welcoming or she's welcoming, and basically has students that will take the kids around. It's a different story, but we've experienced whatever, and we kind of had to work it out. So what happens is they'll make a few friends sometimes, but they remain friends with the other exchange students that are like in the district, so they meet up. But one of the funny incidents that happened, I mean, we were just wrong about this. I think it was with Claudia from Columbia.
It was, Chile,
Chile, excuse me.
Chile, yeah.
Anyway, they were all upstairs. It was her birthday, and they were kind of kidding around and doing stuff with the computer. And then all of a sudden, we hear this laughing. We're like, "What the heck's going on?" I go upstairs. One of the girls accidentally sits on the shredder, and her skirt is
Getting sucked into the shredder.
Of course, one of the boys are like taking pictures and stuff like this, like. Well, we saved the day, but we were all on the floor laughing about this. It was like, and one of the girls had this laugh that was just like, you couldn't even stop. If you weren't gonna laugh, you were gonna laugh from the, so things like that would happen. That's
But
cool.
7 or 8 exchange students all in your house,
Yeah,
that
but
is
we don't-
astounding.
But not all at the same time.
No, not all at the same time.
No, but there was an upside to that too, because, Linda and I never had kids.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we got to learn, I never went to a high school.
But you have it the hardest time. The teenagers, that's a bad year.
We had one Sweet 16 party, was the only one we ever had. One of the girls turned 16 and that was a blast. And then we had, one of the girls played basketball for Sayville High School. So I found myself going to basketball games. But it was such an experience that we had.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah,
would
that
have.
part was great. Also, when you go to their homes, because we've been to Paris many times. We went to Charlotte's wedding. We saw her first baby, her second baby.
Amazing.
So
Wonderful.
we kept up.
Wonderful.
The Catania trip was wonderful. We went to the Czech Republic twice. And I'm just gonna say this, there were at least 2 times, once when we had gone to Písek, which is a town 3 hours from Prague, and the other time was when Charlotte got married. Holy mackerel. Where we're sitting there, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I don't understand a word anybody is saying, but I am really happy that I'm here. It's like this fellowship. I can't explain it any other way. It's like you're with these people, they're celebrating something, they love you, you love them, and it's just fabulous. It really is.